Beer. The last thing that comes into my mind when I think about beer is beer soup. Let's make beer soup from 1787. Thanks for joining us today. So here on the Townsend's channel, we're digging into history. We're trying to understand 18th century North America, the influences, and we're looking for those things that don't fit. And we're trying to understand them all the more. And we're looking at these other cultures that influence North America. And here, we're talking about cooking. What are the food things that don't fit? Well, we've got this 18th century German cookbook, and we've got something that doesn't fit, at least with our modern thought process, right? A beer soup? I mean, what is beer soup and why don't we still have it? So let's look at this recipe. So this is a 1787 recipe. It's translated by the folks down at Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Mix a small spoonful of flour, sweet cream, a couple of egg yolks, and light beer. It probably means small beer, right? Add a little piece of butter and sugar to taste. Bring to a boil, stir constantly. Serve over thin slices. Simple recipe, but beer soup, I've never had beer soup. I don't know what this is going to turn out like. So let's get started on this one. Okay, let's put all our ingredients together in our little cooking pot. We've got our beer here. Again, this the recipe they translated as light beer or small beer. Got a nice little quantity here. We'll go ahead and we'll put some flour in here. It said a small spoonful. I'm not sure exactly how much. I'm just going to put in a little bit of flour here. Again, we're just kind of guessing on this recipe. Because there are no ingredients, it is really up to our taste. I've got some cream. And probably got a cup of cream here. I don't think I want to use all that. Let's go half a cup of cream. I have some egg yolks. So this will thicken it up here. We're going to just whisk these egg yolks up a little bit. We got 2 egg yolks. There we go. So there's not much left to this. The last, it says sugar to taste. Well, I have no idea how much sugar is going to be the right amount, and I might even wait till the very end to sugar this as it starts to cook up, and I can get a kind of a flavor note here. But I'm going to start with about a tablespoon of, and it calls for brown sugar. We get this quick stir to get all that flour in there. And our last ingredients before it goes on the fire is some butter. Again, it doesn't give an ingredient here, so I'm going to use about a small hen's eggs worth of butter. I think that should be about right. And now we're going to set this over the fire. And remember, it calls for stirring it constantly. We don't want this to burn. It's got a lot of that cream in there. So I haven't tested this recipe. I really don't know exactly where this is going to go. And trying to interpret this recipe, understand it. From what I know of, I mean, I've heard of beer soup before. But, how does it fit in the cuisine? And I believe that this is a higher, or let's say a fancy version of a poor food. You can imagine taking out the expensive ingredients of this one, not putting in the egg yolks, possibly using milk instead of cream, and maybe no sugar, and you get a very, very simple soup made with beer and something like flour or breadcrumbs or toast that's boiled in this. It shows up in literature and ideas of poor people's food in Northern Europe. That's definitely a possibility here, that the roots of this, or maybe vice versa. That poor version has its roots in this dish. I'm not sure which way it goes. I'm certainly not an expert in sort of that Northern European, 16th century or 17th century food history, but very interesting. So here it is, beer soup. It's ready. Smells great. Very, very interesting. I can't wait to try this out. But if we're going to try out beer soup, we need to be someplace special. Well, welcome to the Nutmeg Tavern. This is obviously the place where you're going to have to try your beer soup. And who knows, this might have been something like they would have served in taverns. So this is going to be the perfect place to try this out. So I've got my toast here. And I've got my nice warm beer soup. Let me give it a stir because that's got butter in it and that kind of comes to the top. And tell you what, this has got a very, very interesting smell to it. And I'm just really curious. So let's find out. Whoa, those are some really, this is really, really interesting. Okay. I've got there's some flavors here that are very reminiscent of, boy, I wish I could put my finger on it. You know, the beer flavor comes through in a very, very interesting way. And again, this is meant to be a small beer or a light beer, let's say. That's a kind of a modern term for a small beer, low alcoholic beer. I chose a beer that wasn't very hoppy. I didn't want a lot of hops here. That's not my favorite thing. But you get this very interesting beer flavor in there, not too strong, like cream of beer soup, right? But it's got some other flavors that I just cannot identify. I'm gonna have to get some other people to try this out. You should try this out at home because I think you'll find this really interesting.